The crystal chandeliers above sparkled like fallen stars as the final notes of the orchestra faded into uneasy silence. The grand ballroom, once alive with laughter, champagne toasts, and whispered ambition, froze in disbelief. The air seemed to hold its breath. Silverware hung suspended mid-air, glasses trembled in hands that moments ago had been clinking in celebration. And in the middle of it all, a woman in a wheelchair trembled. Her diamond necklace caught the golden light, scattering reflections across her tear-streaked face. Her voice cracked through the heavy silence. "Please don't hurt me. I can't walk." Her words were not only born of fear. They carried the weight of years of buried pain, of nights spent staring into darkness, wondering if life had forgotten her. The plea was more than a cry for safety. It was a confession of every wound she had never allowed to bleed. As the crowd stared in stunned silence, a man stepped forward. The janitor, the quiet one who mopped the floors every evening and nodded politely when spoken to. His mop clattered to the marble floor. His eyes, usually lowered, were now dark with a secret that would change everything. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, then listen carefully. Because sometimes, even the people we overlook carry the greatest stories of redemption. Her name was Clara Winslow. At 38, Clara had conquered a world that once told her she didn't belong. She was the CEO of Winslow Dynamics, one of the most prestigious tech firms in the city, a gleaming empire of innovation and ambition. Her name commanded respect. Her vision inspired fear. To the world, Clara Winslow was a symbol of brilliance and power, a woman who had shattered glass ceilings and built her legacy from steel and intellect. But behind the elegant suits and perfect posture lay something far more fragile, a quiet torment that she never allowed the world to see. 3 years earlier, Clara's life had been ripped apart in a single night. The accident had taken more than just her ability to walk. It had taken her trust in humanity. One moment she had been driving home from a charity gala, humming to the radio, and the next, metal had screamed against metal. The crash was a blur of shattered glass, spinning lights, and searing pain. When she woke up in the hospital, the doctors told her she would never walk again. Days blurred into weeks, and weeks into months. The fiancé who had once promised her forever left after 6 weeks of bedside silence. Colleagues who had once celebrated her brilliance now looked at her with pity. Board members whispered that her leadership was an act of sympathy. The world she had built began to crumble, brick by cold, indifferent brick, so she rebuilt herself. Piece by piece, mask by mask. She dressed her pain in designer suits and armed herself with awards and achievements. Every smile was rehearsed, every handshake calculated. She refused to show weakness. The world saw strength, but only she knew how heavy that mask had become. Still, every night, long after the city lights dimmed, she would sit alone in her glass office staring at the skyline, her reflection merging with the dark windows. She would wonder if success meant anything without peace. That winter night, her company was hosting its annual gala, a night of glitter and power, where investors and innovators gathered under chandeliers to congratulate themselves. Clara attended as she always did, her wheelchair gliding silently across the marble floor. She smiled when required, nodded when expected. Every compliment felt like a blade disguised as kindness. Then her gaze caught someone she hadn't noticed before. A man in a faded blue uniform stood near the far wall, quietly pushing a mop. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing calloused hands that looked like they had seen years of work, the kind of work no one thanked you for. His name tag read Eli Carter. He was older than most of the staff, maybe in his early 40s. His eyes were tired but not empty. There was a calmness about him, a deliberate grace in the way he moved, as though every gesture carried meaning. While others saw a janitor, Clara saw something different, a man at peace with humility. When a waiter stumbled, spilling champagne near her wheelchair, Eli appeared almost instantly. He knelt quietly, his voice low and gentle. "I'm sorry, ma'am." The way he said it caught her off guard. There was no nervousness, no servitude, just genuine care, as if he were used to handling broken things delicately. Over the next few weeks, Clara found herself noticing Eli more often. He was always there, before dawn, long after everyone else had left. Cleaning, fixing, mending. Always calm, always silent. Sometimes she'd find him staring out the window at the city lights, his expression far away, lost somewhere between sorrow and memory. She never asked what he was thinking. She was too afraid of what she might see reflected in his eyes. But in his quietness, she found something soothing, a rare peace that her world of glass and power had long forgotten. Then one afternoon, everything changed. The board meeting had been brutal. Investors were furious over a failed product launch. Accusations flew across the table. Voices rose. Clara sat at the head, silent, her face composed though her chest burned. Then Ronald Pierce, a senior director known for his arrogance, slammed his hand against the table. "Maybe the problem is leadership," he shouted. "Maybe we need someone who can stand up for this company." The words hit like a bullet. The room fell silent. Faces froze in shock. Ronald's own complexion drained of color as the weight of his words settled. But it was too late. Clara's throat tightened. Her vision blurred. Without a word, she wheeled herself out of the room before the tears could betray her. She found herself on the lower maintenance floor, where the scent of cleaning supplies replaced the sterile perfume of corporate air. The hum of machines faded behind her, and there, under the dim flicker of a single bulb, was Eli. He looked up from his mop, concern flickering across his face. "Rough day?" he asked softly. Something in his tone, gentle, knowing, unafraid, broke her. She had held her pain like armor for years, but at that moment, the walls cracked. The words spilled out, about the accident, the loneliness, the whispers, the exhaustion of pretending to be unbreakable. Eli said nothing. He listened, really listened. No pity, no judgment, just presence. When she finally stopped, drained and trembling, he said quietly, "You don't have to stand to rise again." The words were simple, but they lodged deep inside her heart. For days, they echoed in her mind. You don't have to stand to rise again. Something began to shift in Clara after that. She found herself smiling at people more, listening. Her leadership softened, not in strength, but in warmth. Employees began to feel valued again. The company, once cold and mechanical, slowly rediscovered its soul. And somehow, Eli always seemed nearby, not close enough to intrude, but never far enough to disappear. They began to share small moments. Coffee in the break room, quiet laughter about the absurdity of corporate life. It was strange how natural it felt, how easy it was to talk to someone who had nothing to gain from her. But every time she asked him about his own life, he changed the subject. "Nothing worth telling," he'd say. "Just trying to make things right." She didn't press. Some wounds, she knew, took time to open. Then came the night that would change everything. The gala. The same grand ballroom, sparkling with chandeliers, humming with false smiles and shallow laughter. Clara had grown used to the rhythm of such nights, the handshakes, the speeches, the photographs that meant nothing. But that night, midway through the celebration, a security officer hurried toward her, whispering urgently, "Ms. Winslow, we found someone near the vault area." "Possible theft." Clara's heart skipped. She followed them through the service hallway, her wheelchair gliding faster than usual. The closer they got, the louder the murmurs grew. When she turned the corner, she froze. Eli stood there, surrounded by security. In his hands was a small velvet box. His head was bowed, eyes shadowed with something that looked like regret. "Eli," she whispered. Security moved to restrain him, but he spoke first, his voice trembling. "Because it belonged to you." He opened the box. Inside was a delicate gold locket, her mother's, the one she had worn the night of the accident, the one she thought had been lost forever. Clara's breath caught. The room blurred. How did you—" Eli looked up, tears shining in his eyes. "I found it. At the crash site." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "You were there?" she whispered. He nodded slowly. "I was the first one who reached your car that night. I pulled you out before it exploded." His voice shook. "I wanted to visit you in the hospital, but your family blocked reporters and strangers. I wanted to tell you the truth, but I couldn't. I wasn't supposed to be there that night." He paused, his jaw tightening. I was the driver of the truck that hit you." The words fell like stones. The room seemed to tilt. Clara's hands trembled on her wheelchair's arms. The murmurs around her turned into a storm of disbelief. "You?" she whispered, barely audible. "You did this to me?" Eli's voice cracked. "Yes, and I've lived with it every day since. I wanted to die that night too, but when I saw you, bleeding, broken, still trying to move, I couldn't. I swore that if you lived, I'd spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. That's why I came here. I didn't mean to hide it from you forever. I just didn't know how to face you." The crowd stared, employees, investors, waiters, all frozen between horror and awe. The man they had ignored for years, the janitor, was now the ghost of their CEO's past. Clara's vision blurred with tears. Rage and sorrow warred inside her. She wanted to scream, to curse him, to make him feel the pain she had carried every day. But then she looked at him, his face trembling, eyes full of remorse. His shoulders bent under the weight of guilt, and something in her heart broke differently this time. All those years of bitterness, all the loneliness, all the resentment, they began to loosen their grip. He had taken her legs, yes, but he had also given her something she hadn't known she needed: hope, compassion, the reminder that even broken souls can help others rise. Her voice, when it came, was soft but steady. "I forgive you." The silence that followed was almost holy. Eli fell to his knees, sobbing. "You don't owe me that." Clara smiled faintly through her tears. "Maybe not, but I owe it to myself." The crowd was still. For the first time in years, Clara felt something deeper than power: peace. The next morning, the city woke to headlines that no one expected. Clara Winslow, the once unapproachable CEO, announced a new initiative within Winslow Dynamics. The janitor, Eli Carter, was to become the new head of employee relations, a man tasked with rebuilding compassion within the company. During the press conference, reporters asked if it was true that the man she promoted had once hurt her. Clara simply smiled. "Sometimes," she said, "the people who clean our floors end up teaching us how to clean our souls." And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like a symbol. She felt human, whole, not because she had power, but because she had found forgiveness. Months later, Clara and Eli could sometimes be seen in the company courtyard during lunch hours, sharing coffee and quiet laughter. The employees who once whispered now smiled when they passed. Winslow Dynamics began to change. Not through new technology, but through something far rarer: empathy. And late at night, when the lights of the city shimmered beyond her office window, Clara no longer felt haunted by what she had lost. Instead, she felt guided by what she had gained, a reminder that redemption often wears the humblest faces, because sometimes the stories that matter most aren't about who stands tallest in the ballroom. They're about who kneels beside the broken and helps them rise again. If this story touched your heart or reminded you that forgiveness can rebuild even the deepest wounds, then share it. Tell someone who needs to hear it, because somewhere out there, another soul is waiting for a second chance. And maybe, just maybe, the person who hurt you the most is the one who will teach you what love truly means.